black male kids are demonized while they are still in their mother's wombs. But what have young boys, infants, and I'm even talking about, for instance, babies that are still in their mother's wombs, that what do they do to deserve to be called trash also? The talk that I want to have with the society today is not an easy one. It is not an easy one because it is likely to lead to some people misunderstanding what I'm about to talk about. And I believe that sometimes such misunderstanding happens not because people misunderstand the message that one wants to send, but there is deliberateness in terms of wanting to misunderstand the message. And again, that deliberateness comes from the point or from the fact that the message might not be in line with particular narrative that a person is more comfortable with or perhaps would like to put forward in terms of society. And if it happens that you become one of those people that listens to this talk that I'm going to make, and you become uneasy because the talk doesn't go with your beliefs that you have adopted, and perhaps the talk that I'm going to give does not go with current narrative and things that you are most comfortable with and you would like the society to be considering instead of what I'm going to talk about. And I would like to put that right at the beginning, that you have a right to do so, not to agree to some of the things that I'm going to say. But at the same time, I believe that I also have a right to express myself in terms of what I see in terms of our society, particularly issues and areas that I believe that are destroying the society. And there seems to be deliberateness in terms of the desire to destroy the society. And I think I have, just like everyone else, I have a right to talk about the things that I see. I am not in any way putting my truth as the only truth that exists in terms of the society, but I believe that my truth also has a place in terms of the society, just like any other truth that someone else might come up with, including the current narratives that I'm going to talk about that I believe are destroying our society. Let me start first by acknowledging the fact that women in the society, in any society, are actually very important. And I think without women, we wouldn't even have a society, we wouldn't talk about a society. And there's a lot that a woman has to sacrifice. And I'm talking here about an adult female when I talk about a woman. When she gets to a point where she gets to marry a man. One of the things, for instance, that I can mention is the fact that she loses identity in the sense that she has to take a surname that she wasn't born with, and she has to adopt another surname and become a member of another family that she wasn't part of. Apart from that, everything that she does is focused on the new family that she becomes part of. And also she has to go through 9 months of pregnancy with a child that now will also carry the name of the family or the husband that she is married to. And that 9 months in some women becomes quite a difficult period because of the hormones and all the other aspects that as men we are not accustomed to. So I think we need to be able to, right at the beginning, to acknowledge that. And the fact that when the woman works to support the family that she is married to instead of the family that she was born to. And also other challenges that women would actually go through. I'm talking about adult females in the process of being in relationships with men. And I want to repeat again, without women, we wouldn't have societies that we have throughout the world. We wouldn't have communities, we wouldn't have societies, we wouldn't even have this pride that we would have as men, where we're saying we have been able to increase the members of the family and ensuring that our names continue, the legacy continues. The legacy continues because of the presence of women in terms of our society. And I think it's important that as men, we need to value women. We need to value them in terms of ensuring that they are provided for, they are protected, and also we provide the necessary leadership. And that's why in some of the talks, and especially the podcasts that I do, I talk about the need for men, especially males. When we're still males, we need to have a situation wherein at some point we need to transition from being males to becoming men, so that we can be able to ensure that women do not find this life hard, but find this life meaningful in terms of the contribution that they need to make in terms of the society. Having said that, I am particularly disturbed in terms of the developments in terms of our society, and I want to be specific in terms of this. In particular, the Black African community, in terms of gender relations. There seems to be high levels of combativeness that exist between women and men. We have a situation wherein I believe there is again deliberate attempt to destroy the Black African community by destroying relationships between men and women. And this, I believe, is done deliberately. It's not by chance. We grew up in an environment wherein, yes, there were certain areas that we could improve on as society in terms of gender roles and in terms of relations between genders, which is male and female, and also ensuring that we have an emancipation of women so that women could feel that they are equal members of the society. My challenge that I have in terms of contemporary society is the drive that seems to exist to demonize black males. And much as one can understand where some of this comes from, but I don't believe that the way that we are dealing with issues is actually the right way. We have a situation wherein black male kids are demonized while they are still in their mother's wombs, where they are called trash, where they are called all names that you can think of. I am so concerned by the fact that you have black African females in the process of pushing their narratives in terms of what they think about men, especially black men, African men, that they can demonize their own young kids just because of the genitalia that they have, that they happen to be born with a penis. I am particularly appalled by the fact that you have black women in the process of pushing the narratives that are meant to deal with some of the hardships that we have, especially that women have in terms of maybe gender equity and some of the gender related social ills like gender-based violence, that in the process of raising awareness around that, they feel that it is necessary to demonize every black man that exists. including children. I am a grown-up, for instance. I think I can be able to withstand some of the things that are thrown around, in terms of how black males are, like men are trash, for instance. I think I can withstand that because I'm a grown-up. I've been able to navigate my way through the world and I know how to survive. But what have young boys, infants, and I'm even talking about, for instance, babies that are still in their mother's womb, what did they do to deserve to be called trash also? Because there seems to be that narrative, and the people that are instigators in terms of that narrative really believe that because of a particular genitalia that you have, a male genitalia that you have, you are trash. And I don't understand as to how they think that it is correct to even say, I can explain to my child or to my son why I call him trash. I don't know if psychologically perhaps that's correct. That a child goes around and say, wherever that he is walking, knowing that he is trash, and you as a parent telling yourself that, no, I've explained to him why he is trash, and the child is supposed to be okay with it. I don't know what kind of society are we actually breeding. A society that says, because we want to push particular narratives, and some of these narratives that are perhaps fighting just causes, that we need to at the same time demonize each other, to an extent that we use derogatory language to drive certain messages across. And I'm asking myself whether is it not possible to drive these messages across in a manner that is still understandable, that is acceptable to all people within the society, including the drivers of the message themselves, without demonizing the society. That's one of the challenges that I have. And I would like to appeal, especially to our black African women, that yes, when there are social ills that come up, be vocal about them. And as men also, we need to be able to understand and deal with the social ills. But at the same time, I don't think that it is correct to destroy the society in the process of talking about these social ills. I understand that some of the people that the ones that are driving some of these narratives come from environments wherein they have been wounded by some of these things that have been done in terms of the society and also to them. And I understand that when people are wounded in some instances, the things that come out from their mouths and the things that they say would reflect the level of woundedness that they have, and also the hardships that they have experienced in life. Because I certainly do not believe that there are women that are in loving relationships, that have got loving partners, that really are good men and are doing everything that make them happy, that would go out there and say all men are trash. My belief, I could be wrong, and I stand to be corrected, that the majority of people that truly believe that men are trash are people that have been wounded in terms of relationships, people that they've been in relationships with, or perhaps know or are closer to people that have been wounded in relationships. And when I talk about being wounded in relationships, I'm talking about various aspects of being wounded, including gender-based violence, or in terms of being betrayed, or a number of things that you can think of that can cause a person to be wounded in terms of relationships. I, however, even then, do not believe that because someone has wounded you, you then have a right to demonize everyone that belongs to that group simply because you have been brutalized or you've been wounded by this individual. I think let's address that. Let's have a situation where we're going to say, yes, some men will abuse women, and that has got to be dealt with. The same way, however, as some women will abuse a lot of men. Because there are a lot of men that are abused by women in relationships, but they don't go around in streets and say women are trash or talk and all. They actually act differently and do other things. Some of them, they become abusers because they too are being abused in terms of the relationship, but they become, physical abusers instead of being emotional abusers, because in some instances they are emotionally abused in some of their relationships. And in some instances we do need to look at that and say, some of the things that we have in terms of the society, is it not because that perhaps all genders that we have are equally guilty of some of the social ills that we have? I am not in any way trying to downplay some of the atrocities that we have seen in terms of our society, but I am merely saying that let's not, in the process of trying to address the issues that we're dealing with in terms of the society, destroy the society at the same time. Right now we have a serious challenge of single home led homes in terms of South Africa. One of the challenges that has been identified, and there's a study, if you are a person that does your own research, please do your research, go and Google as to what's the percentage of single parent households in South Africa. And you can compare that in terms of race, in terms of whites, in terms of Indians, in terms of coloreds, in terms of also Africans. And you will see that the African community is the one that has got a higher percent, in fact not a high percentage, the highest percentage of single parent households. And it's not because the parents have died. No, both parents are around, they are alive. And one of the challenges that I also want you to also see is to where do we experience most of these social ills in terms of our society? And you compare again in terms of whites, Indians, coloreds, and African. And you'll find that most of these social ills that we experience, the highest percentage is actually found within the Black African community, because we are destroying, and we have destroyed, the family unit. And we have destroyed the family unit because of the things that we've been doing as a society. We have a situation wherein kids grow up without the benefit of being raised by both the mother and the father. There is a deliberate attempt to destroy the Black African community, because the nucleus of any community or any society is the family unit. And without that, you then have a problem. Right now on social media, we have a lot of things that we see. We see kids that openly, do things like smoking dacha at school, stabbing each other, a lot of things that happen in terms of our society. We have also the high percentage of teenage pregnancies and kids giving birth to kids, and you also have a lot of single mothers in terms of our society. And when you ask men also as to why do we have a lot of single mothers, and a lot of men normally say that, you know what, I love my kid or my kids, and I would love to raise or to be part of my kids, but I cannot stand the abuse that I am getting from my counterpart. I'd rather disappear. Now, I'm not saying that's an excuse that is there for all males. There are males that just abandon their kids and they do not look after their kids. But a number of males point to the fact that they want to be there in their kids' lives, but they are prevented from doing so because of the attitude, the behavior, and the actions of the mothers, because they are very combative and they are very abusive in terms of how they come across, in terms of especially the things that they say. Because let's acknowledge that we do have a situation wherein women are emancipated, and there are laws that have been passed that protect women. And unfortunately, some women abuse some of these laws. There are women, for instance, that abuse The fact that you can be able to go and report a rape case, you can go and report an abuse case. There are women that falsely accuse men of abuse. There are women that falsely accuse men of rape. And in those instances, most of these males, they would say, I'd rather stay alone and stay away from this particular woman because I don't want a situation wherein I'm going to be accused of something, because it's easy to accuse me and I get to be arrested without even having to defend myself and having to go and defend myself in court, because the laws that exist currently simply say to police they need to arrest me and ask questions later in court, not even in jail. So these are some of the challenges that I have, and I'm pleading to us as a society that maybe we need to take a step back and say and look at ourselves. Where have we gone wrong? Is the trajectory that we are following one that is going to build our society, or one that is going to destroy our society? And who gets to benefit from the destruction of the black society? I am not in any way saying that the other societies are not important, but I'm more concerned because I do see a lot of these social ills in terms of our community than in the other communities. Hence, I am focusing in terms of our society. So I don't know as to whether who benefits from this. And we have a situation wherein there seems to be a disregard or a total disregard of the family unit. And there is even, I think, in my head now, a redefinition of what a family means. It's no longer a woman and a man raising kids under the same roof. A family these days simply means me and my child. Now, me and my child is a woman, me and my child is a man. It's no longer defined in that manner. And I mean, a friend of mine narrated a story recently wherein he spoke about a child during these holidays that just passed now. I'm talking about an 8-year-old child who was rescued walking on a Saturday, rescued by the police. Rescued by the police because he was wearing uniform and he was walking on the road, and he was walking in the road, and I'm talking about in the middle of the road, cars passing and no one looking after him. I'm talking about a small child here, and he was wearing school uniform. And when a member of the public pulled him away from the road and asked him as to where he was going, he said he was going to school. And the police were called, and he was taken by the police to the police station. And obviously the police fortunately were able to talk to the child to find out as to where he comes from. He was able to tell as to, my mother is so and so, and I stay in this place, and my mother's cell number is this. And the police called the mother, and the mother was able to go to the police station to fetch the child and took him back to school. The mother had left the child to go to work, and the child was still asleep. And the child woke up, there was no one in the house, washed, put on his clothes, and he was going to school. Now, I sometimes, when I hear such stories, think about a situation wherein if there was another parent at home, would that have not been avoided? Because one of the challenges that we have with these current narratives that we have in our society, like, I don't need a man, I can be a parent to my child alone or to my children alone, and men are trash, all the flowery language that seeks to demonize men. One of the things that I do know is the fact that women struggle a lot in terms of life, and they do need companion to be able to assist them. No matter how liberated you think you are. Fortunately for those that have got lots of money and have been blessed in life, they are able to have services of maids, and in some instances they can have more than one helper or maid in their house that would be responsible for, one would be responsible for cleaning, one would be responsible for looking at the kids, including maybe the education and the fetching of kids from school and all that stuff. And I think it would be unfair for a female that is as fortunate as that to want to instill her liberated thoughts to a woman that is struggling, that requires assistance and from a companion to be able to raise the family and to raise the kids. To say, you don't need a man. Yes, you being fortunate in terms of your life, you probably don't need a man because you do have the resources that can be able to assist you to close the gap that would be there when, for instance, a companion is not there. But what about the mothers that are struggling, that wake up at 4 a.m. and take 5 taxis to go to work, and they have to take again 5 taxis to go back home? When do they actually see their kids? When do they have time to have discussions with their kids? When do they have time to help the kids with their homework? Now, someone might say, but why are you blaming women? Why are you not blaming men? I'm also blaming men for that situation. That's why I said this situation that we have in terms of our society is a society that requires all hands on deck from both males and females. But the demonizing of men becomes a barrier in terms of making sure that that happens. And also the abuse of women becomes a barrier in terms of making that happen. And I think that we need to go back and deal with some of the information that has been instilled in us, foreign information that has been instilled in us as a society, that has broken our community, our culture, and our way of life, such that we live now lives that are totally different from who we are as a society. And when you look at us these days, it's difficult to identify us as a unique society that is different from other societies. We have adopted cultures. We have adopted language. We have adopted traditions and practices that are foreign to us, that are not us. And because they are not us, they are breaking our society. Because they don't belong to our society. They belong to other societies, but not ours. They are working in terms of those societies, but with our society, they are actually breaking our society. You have young men these days that are highly stressed. I am in a position of at least being fortunate to have male adult kids, and I watch them every day. The struggles that they go through in terms of identity, not because I've never given them identity or other male parents have not given their kids identity. The challenge is how they are supposed to navigate the society or the world, because one of the challenges that they have is they no longer know how to act. When they act in a masculine manner, because there's this negative connotation that has been put on masculinity, where, for instance, there seems to be a desire by certain groups of people to define what masculinity or positive masculinity is supposed to be. And the challenge that I have with that is the fact that the very groups, when you want to talk about femininity, they do not want you to talk about femininity and say, you have no right to tell us as women as to what we're supposed to do. And yet they believe that they have a right to tell men how to be men. And I think that's where, for instance, some of these challenges come from, where you're going to have one group of people that is going to think that it has a divine right, suddenly an acquired divine right, to to be the one that comes up with information that is supposed to be left and adopted by the society, and other aspects of the society or certain groups within the society are not supposed to say anything, even on things that relate to who they are. Men these days have a problem of this thing that is called toxic masculinity. A lot of males, when they hear toxic masculinity, they want to run and hide. The easiest way to make a contemporary male, especially black African male, to shut up these days is to say that he is a toxic male. This male has got toxic masculinity. And most African males are scared to be called toxic masculine. And fortunately for me, I mean, you can call me toxic masculine as much as you want, and I will actually invite you to tell me why. And if there is something that I'm doing that is wrong, I will admit and apologize. But I do not believe that when you call me toxic masculine, that would make me shut up and not be able to express myself. I will still express myself. So if it happens that maybe in anything that I've said and I'm still saying right now points to a comfortable definition that you have in your head that would make me toxic masculine, I encourage you to engage me in a discussion around it. And perhaps you might find that you are wrong in terms of how you would be looking at what I'm saying. So one of the things therefore that I'm saying is contemporary black African females have come up with certain different terminology that they've weaponized against their own black brothers, like toxic masculinity, narcissist. And that's one of the things that I've found these days, that this is a word that is loosely used by our sisters to demonize black African males, where they call us narcissists. And I always wonder as to whether perhaps is it because this word only belongs to black males only, or perhaps it belongs to everyone, including our black sisters themselves, because essentially at some level all of us are narcissists. I'm talking about women and men, because there's a bit of narcissism that you need to have in order for you to have mental wellness. You need to love yourself. Now imagine someone that believes that her partner is a narcissist and really has internalized that, and yet there is no proof, because maybe you have a loving man that loves his family, and the only thing that is there is the fact that he loves himself, he has confidence in himself, and also he's assertive. And because of those things, because he cannot put you on a pedestal and allow you to do as you please, and therefore you see that as a narcissist, instead of saying that, okay, this is a person that I need to accommodate the fact that he is himself, he's assertive, and he's not me, because he doesn't want to put me on a pedestal that makes him a narcissist. And you have a person or a man that goes around in his home that is looked at as a narcissist wherever he goes. When he goes to the fridge and opens the fridge, and you have someone that thinks, the narcissist is opening the fridge. And you have a situation wherein you sit on your couch and you're watching TV, and you have a person that says in her head, the narcissist is watching the TV. And you have a situation wherein you're speaking over the phone, someone is looking at you and thinking to herself, the narcissist is talking over the phone. And you have a situation wherein you eat your food. As you're eating your food, this person is looking at you and saying the narcissist is eating. When you are sleeping, the person is not sleeping, is looking at you and saying the narcissist is sleeping. You have a situation wherein we internalize all these things against our partners that make it difficult for you to be able to see any good thing, and in fact not want, deliberately for that matter, not want to see any good thing that is being done, because there's the craving by some of our sisters to want to be put on pedestals that they do not belong to. Because being put on a pedestal comes with you also, playing your part. Relationships are transactional. They are not unidimensional. You can't expect to be put on a pedestal whereas you're not putting your partner on a pedestal yourself. Relationships are transactional. We need to be able to ensure that we play our parts, both as men and women, in our relationships. And in that way, we will not have a situation wherein we suddenly become bitter and we start using derogatory concepts and words towards our partners, that become, unfortunately, self-fulfilling prophecies also, because all the time you're going to be thinking about this is what this person is all about, whereas you have convinced yourself that this is who this person is. And I want to repeat again, that is dangerous. It is destroying us as a community, it's destroying us as a society, and that is destroying our societies. I am well aware that there are people that deserve to be called, these names that I've given, or these derogatory words that I've mentioned, because they really such people. But a number of people do not deserve that. But because of some of these movements and cabals and groups that have been formed that are propagating the destruction of the family. And again, I always say some of these groups are filled with people that are wounded. And unfortunately, because they have not been able to deal with their own wounds, they believe, therefore, that they need to be able to do these things in terms of the society. And in them, they believe that they are creating awareness within the society, whereas they are actually breaking the society. I am not in any way saying that awareness campaigns are not supposed to be run. But let's be careful in terms of how we do things. Let's make sure that we do things for the right things, not because we have our own selfish interests that come from the fact that we have been wounded in terms of our relationships. I welcome any input and feedback that we can get in terms of how we can create positive conversations and platforms to deal and talk about these issues, so that we deal with the true facts in terms of issues and also how we can build our society and be able to separate through issues, social ills that are happening in terms of our society, and deal with them, to normal squabbles and disagreements that would happen within relationships that do not warrant us using a lot of this terminology, demonizing terminology that we're currently using in terms of our community. Now, I know that there are extremes in terms of narcissism, but this word has been loosely thrown around these days to demonize males. And I think, again, that is wrong. The same as toxic masculinity, that is wrong. The same as men are trash, that is wrong. And I want to repeat again, perhaps as older males, we can be able to withstand some of the attacks that are sort of done. But I don't think that young men can be able to withstand some of the attacks when they go towards them, because they have not lived life, so they don't know how to navigate their way through life, and they still need assistance. They don't know how to communicate or deal with their female counterparts in case they are called toxic masculine, in case they are called trash, in case they are called narcissist, because these words are used in such a manipulative way by some contemporary black women to get their own way. When, for instance, you disagree with something and you become assertive, you are called a narcissist. And this is one way of, again, of bringing you down and shutting you down as a black male. When you are able to assert yourself again as a black male, you are called toxic masculine. And when you stand up, for your rights as a person, you're called abusive. And yet, when our female counterparts stand for their rights, they are not called abusive. And I think we need to have conversations. In fact, that's really what I would like to encourage. Let's have several platforms where we demystify some of these things, so that when you then call someone an abuser, it is because that person is really an abuser. You're not using it in order to manipulate a situation. When you call that person or another person toxic masculine, really, it should be because that person has toxic masculinity. And when you call your partner or someone else a narcissist, it should be because really that person is a narcissist. And it's not a way of manipulating, of wanting to manipulate your partner. Some, for instance, of our sisters even have cabals that they've created to attack their own partners using this thing. Some of males, for instance, this is why some males do not want to be in long-lasting relationships. They come into relationships, they exit relationships quickly, and they leave wounded women behind. And some of these women by that time would have even perhaps given birth to their kids. It's because what happens is, when you have a disagreement and suddenly you have your partner that then goes to a cabal that is formed, and this cabal, because also is a wounded cabal, they then are able to come and say, let's help you, sister, this is how your man is, and you are demonized and you're given all these names. Now, I am not in any way saying that some of us as men do not deserve to be called these things. Perhaps we do deserve to be called these things because some of us do these things that require that we be labeled in terms of these toxic names that we give him. But in a number of instances, these words are used, or this terminology, and everything that I've mentioned is used to manipulate situations. When you're not able to get your own way, you then feel that it is necessary for you to do that. Unfortunately, this is breaking our society. And I want to repeat again, if you feel that this is a man that is just talking and he doesn't know what he's talking, I want you to do your own research. Just Google, just go to Google. I'm not going to give you sources. Google and look, like I said, the percentage of, single parent households in terms of the different societies that we have, race groups that we have in terms of our society compared to the other race groups that we have. And you also look at the percentage of social ills that are experienced by the different societies that we have within our community and communities. And we also look at the breakdown that we have in terms of society and communities where it's happening the most. And you will be able to see that it is happening amongst the black African community. Now, I do not believe that, for instance, politicians really have an appetite to deal with these issues, because a number of them, they are busy looting the state, and they're busy enriching themselves and doing all the things that obviously would benefit themselves and their families, and therefore they have no interest in terms of the wider community. But I do believe that there are also maybe one or two or three politicians that would be concerned about the things that I'm talking about, that would be willing to deal with some of these issues. But these issues are supposed to be dealt mostly by civil society, ourselves as the society, ourselves as men, ourselves as women, we the people that are supposed to be dealing with these issues. We can't look up to government and say government is supposed to come up with policies and laws to actually deal with it. We have seen what government does. When they promulgate laws, they do not look at ways that can ensure that there is implementation of these laws such that there's redress in terms of the society. Now, we can use also other platforms, come out as groups. We can use the churches, we can use even NGOs to try and build our society. Because I personally, I am concerned on the type of society that we're going to leave for our children, for our grandchildren, for our great-grandchildren. What kind of society are we going to leave for our children? One of the sayings that was made by a singer, well-known artist within South Africa, Hugh Sigele. He said that there will come a time where someone, or maybe when we have visitors from other countries that come to this country, when they see us in the near future, if we continue on this trajectory, when they talk to us and ask us as to who we are, our great-grandchildren, they will probably say that we used to be called Africans, because we have lost who we were and who we're supposed to be as Africans. And it's important that we begin to reclaim being African. We begin to reclaim who we are as an African society. We reclaim our culture. Yes, if there are aspects that we sort of need to sort of modify and deal with, let's deal with those. But let's not throw the baby with the bathwater. We do still need to have morals that make us Africans, that make us to be able to sort of bring our community together, entrench the values that used to make us this formidable community, this proud and this community that everyone used to look up to and say, we wish that we were like that community. They have values, they have identity. We have lost the values, we have lost the identity, and that has happened because of the gender wars that we have and the destruction of the family as we know it, or as we knew it, as the South African Black society. But again, I mean, this also is happening in terms of African Americans, and I don't know as to what is wrong with us in terms of allowing other systems and communities to impose cultures that are foreign to us, that are not good for our communities, that are not good for our societies, that are breaking and destroying our society. We need to reclaim who we are. Let's go back to where we were and who we're supposed to be. If there are modifications, like I said, let's look at those modifications. Let's engage. And if we have disagreements, at least let's have a situation wherein we disagree in a respectful manner. Let's not demonize each other, because demonization of each other is leading to what we have in current. One of the things that is important when we talk about this relationship, or this seemingly combative relationship between males and also females in terms of the black population, is the fact that I do not understand as to why it is difficult for us to be able to get along and also be on this antagonistic type of relationship. One of the things that I admire about women is the fact that, I mean, they validate themselves. I mean, a number of women currently, they call themselves queens, and yet they're not really queens. But they are calling themselves queens because they are self-validating. They're not going to wait for anyone to actually validate them. It's self-validating. They see themselves as queens. The challenge comes when that idea becomes so entrenched in a person's mind, such that you feel that you need to be served and you do not have to also be transactional in terms of the relationship that you have with your partner, and your partner needs to treat you like a queen, whereas you, on the other hand, you don't treat your partner like a king. And that's where the challenge is. And I am not by any means saying that if a person does not behave and act in a manner that is kingly, therefore the person deserves to be treated as like a king, whereas there's nothing about him that shows that he is a king. All I'm trying to say is that this is a transactional relationship that is supposed to be there. If you want to be treated like a queen, it's important that if your partner is doing everything that he's supposed to do, you also treat him like a king. Now, I don't know if, for instance, how the society would feel if men who believe that they are doing the best in terms of their lives and they would go around calling themselves kings. And I think maybe that's where this narcissism would come into the picture, that if I were to go around and call myself a king, just like females call themselves queens, I would probably be called a narcissist, because I don't know whether perhaps it's wrong for a man to self-validate, just like, for instance, women do self-validation. And it's important for us to look at these things and not look at one side. Everything goes wrong in terms of the society where we do not find a balance in terms of narratives and things that we talk about and things that we'd like to see. If there are queens, clearly there should also be kings. And again, if you look at males, I mean, I don't think that as males we're supposed to be automatically becoming kings because of the type of genitalia that we have. We need to become kings because of the things that we do that make us to look like kings in terms of what is required in terms of the society. Protecting, providing, and also showing leadership, because that's what a king does. Surely if we're not doing all those things, we do not deserve to be called kings. I do not know, therefore, in terms of ladies, as to when they call themselves queens, what is it that really they be exhibiting? Because I am clear in terms of males that you need to be called a king because you're doing your job, you're showing the required leadership, you are able to protect, you're able to provide, you're able to love. Those aspects then would be able to make someone say you act like a king. And when you are a female and you call yourself a queen, what sort of characteristics are you exhibiting that are not only self-centered characteristics that are just looking at yourself only? I'm not in any way saying people should not call themselves queens. Please do call yourselves queens. But I'm just asking a question. Maybe that's an area of conversation as to what is it that makes you a queen? Is it because you are born female and therefore you become a queen by the very nature of being a female, or perhaps there are certain characteristics that make you a queen? And because if we have a queen, there should be probably peasants or subjects that would actually be looking at you as a queen. Who are the subjects? And if as a man I call myself as a king, who are the people that look up to me? And I would like to believe that in terms of my understanding, and I stand to be corrected, if I call myself a king, that would mean that, for instance, my family, that would include my wife, that would include my kids, see me as someone that can be given respect because I'm able to lead, I'm able to provide, I'm able to protect, and also I show love and caring. And therefore, perhaps then that sort of makes me deserve a status of being called a king in terms of my own house. But if you are called a queen, what are the characteristics that you'll be exhibiting, not just in terms of you in looking at yourself, but towards others, the people that you live with? And these are the discussions that I would like us to have, because they are real discussions that I believe that can bring a bit of reality in terms of how we interact with each other, and we're able to sort of make sure that whatever that we do and the narratives that we drive are relevant narratives that are based on reality, and narratives that are meant to sort of build us as a society. Now, for men, The reason why I think that sometimes we get into so much trouble is because we have sort of steered away from acting in a manly manner, where we're supposed to build kingdoms and build these kingdoms wherein we can be able to attract the relevant queens and then have the necessary kids. Most of us, we don't build kingdoms. We don't make ourselves attractive. And some of our behaviors do not resemble that of being of a man that deserves a king status. We do not build kingdoms. We don't work hard. I understand in terms of the economy that things are tough. We're no longer having the agrarian economy where we had land, we had livestock. We don't have that. And therefore, the money economy is brutal, to men. It's no longer as easy as it was during the agrarian period where we had vast pieces of land, and we also have, flocks of sheep, herd of cattle, and goats. We no longer have those things. We now in the money economy. In the money economy, there's only a small number of people that actually get to be at the top and also able to amass wealth in terms of the money economy. So that also makes it a bit difficult in terms of making ourselves kings. But nevertheless, even if that's the case, we need to try our level best as men to build our kingdoms so that we can be able to attract people that can respect us. But at the same time, we need to also have a situation wherein when we have attracted the people in our lives, we're able to act in a manner that protects them. I talk about protection, I'm talking about protecting them in terms of both physically and mentally, and also being able to provide the necessary leadership apart from just providing. Now, one of the things that also I think is important is that we need to create platforms for conversations so that instead of coming up with slogans and narratives when things go wrong and we start antagonizing each other, we have these formed platforms and forums where we engage on certain areas that are meant to educate each other so that we do not end up demonizing each other and calling each other names, whereas we could be able to come up with platforms that will enable us to have meaningful conversations, and like the one that I'm having with you. And contemporary conversations has been started clearly or simply because of that, where one wants to create a platform wherein we can have these difficult and uncomfortable conversations. Though, yes, they're difficult and uncomfortable, but they are meant to build the society. And let's have these conversations. Let's get into platforms. We have online sessions. We also have sessions wherein we meet and we talk, in a manner that seeks to build the society so that at the end of the day, we do not have a broken society because we were unable to talk to each other. We depend on each other. We need each other. I don't think that the one gender can exist without the other, though I think there are people that might be pushing such a narrative. It is totally unnecessary to have such a narrative. We can be able to collaborate. We can be able to cooperate. We can be able to work with each other and love each other like brothers and sisters. I encourage you, let's have talks. Let's have these conversations. Let's embrace each other instead of seeing each other as enemies. Thank you.